going to talk a little bit about documenting requirements. Now, this isn't a requirements class. There's a whole class on requirements, and when I talk about that requirements class, I'll go into much more detail. But I think it's important to revisit this topic from the perspective of testing, because documenting requirements is good for building systems, but it's even more important and probably more valuable for testing than design. Designers can figure it out. Designers can have conversations and figure out what's supposed to be built, but testers need to formalize the requirements in order to know exactly what to test. So we've talked about earlier in the class how we've captured these things. We talked about the idea of use cases. We talked about some of that, and I think in the very first week. But let's talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing now that it's time to formalize writing down your requirements. In this class, you're building a test plan. A test plan is not it's not a pointing to each screen and each field on each screen and each option and each fail message and each success message and each path. The test plan is that high level coverage of those high level functions that are listed. In modern software development, not exclusively, but in most modern software development projects, you're dealing in use cases. And so if I'm looking at a system like an Amazon, I have a use case for browsing and shopping and buying, adding things to shopping cart. I have a use case for checking out. I have a use case for looking up the status of my purchase, my delivery status. I have a use case for returns. I have a use case for my profile and managing my profile. I have a use case for giving feedback. All these different things. Even just the description right there, you have an idea because you're familiar with Amazon, what's going on inside of there. Maybe aren't familiar with certain things. If you're dealing with like health insurance, you're talking about adjudication, you may or may not know what that means, but you have generally a high-level synopsis from the use case, even just the description of the use case. So then we need to come up with a plan which goes over and covers each one of those high-level features and gives us an idea of what's being tested, how it's being tested, what test cases are out there. So if I'm, for instance, doing just browsing and adding something to the shopping cart, I would have a search for a product. That's one way of doing it. That'd be one test case. Search for a product, find it, add to the shopping cart. Another one would be browsing, finding, adding to a shopping cart. Another one might be a recommendation link, adding it to a shopping cart. So they're all, in the use case, they're all different ways that could be described, and I want to test all those ways. But then I want to have other problems as well. So let's say I add to the shopping cart, but it's out of stock. Or I add to the shopping cart, but it's prohibited in your state. Like you're in California, you're not allowed to buy that snowblower because it's the wrong engine type or something like that. Those are all test cases that might not be apparent at the high level, but you'd maybe just capture them. And I'm not looking for you to capture every detail of said test case, but just say, the ones I just mentioned, you have a high level description and that's going to map it out. That's the high level test cases, and thus at the high level requirements, we just need to be able to align those. For one part of your system, that's where we need to have like a full use case or a full set of descriptions. So for one test case, you only need to have one. Don't do login. Have a whole description. So for instance, checking out the shopping cart. So you'll say the user hits the checkout button, and based off of the prior use case, prior test case, based off the prior test case, in their shopping cart is a snowblower, hat, gloves, and boots, and the total should be $327.47, and they hit the checkout now button. And then on the next screen, it will ask them to enter their payment method, and so they're going to put in the credit card number as specified here. Boom, 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 boom. That'll be the detailed requirements. And so just to give you an idea of what we're looking for, which we need one detailed one out like that. Doesn't have to, it could be a use case that gives a similar level of detail, could be some detailed requirements, and then some high level features. So when you see the numbers that are going to show up later on, that's what we're looking for. That's how I'd like you to break it down. A few high level ones and then one detailed one from there.